Let me call to order this Mayor Commission work session. Today is Monday, May 20th. Time is 9 a.m. We will get started even though we don't have all of the commissioners here. Commissioner Fox is out of the country, and we're expecting the imminent arrival of Commissioners Peduzzi and Ward. So we'll get started because we do have a pretty full agenda. We'll start with item 1, tree canopy assessment. Ms. Johnson, you want to see this per penny?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Penny Redford, Climate Change and Resilience Manager. And yes, once again, we're here to talk about trees. You know, with climate change, the crazy extreme heat that we have been seeing, and our goals within the city to have a more walkable and equitable city, then trees are really one of the solutions to that. So we have been working on a tree canopy assessment update, which we're going to be presenting to you today. And specifically, we're looking for your input on a tree canopy improvement goal. And the reason I really want to call that out is because everyone loves trees, but there are dollars involved with increasing our canopy and also taking care of the trees that we already have. So that is a big part of what we'd like you to comment on today. And once we do get your input, then we're going to take the assessment to the community, and then ultimately it will come back to you for adoption. I want to introduce Nicole Polio. She is our Sustainability Program Coordinator in charge of green infrastructure and outdoor water conservation. She's done a truly fabulous job on the projects that she's been working on, and it is with a sad heart for me, but happy for her to say that she is going to be moving on to bigger and better things, and actually tomorrow is her last day with the city. She stayed so she could help with this presentation because she's worked really a lot on it. So just want to say thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to give a little background on some of our tree initiatives and programs and projects that we've had going on over the past couple years and currently. Our office has successfully applied for grants through the state, allowing for over 32,000 trees on city property to be inventoried. This informs management and planting strategies. We have worked with neighborhood associations to complete tree planting projects in the north end of the city. We are partnering with the DDA to plant shade trees in the downtown with technology that will allow them to have longer lifespans. The next grant-funded tree planting project is scheduled to add much-needed shade along the new commuter Clear Lake Trail, completed earlier this year. The Office of Sustainability has given away over 9,000 native shade trees to residents to plant in their yards and increase the shade canopy on private property. Internally, we have a central tree team comprised of staff from Parks, Developmental Services, Public Works, and Utilities. Together, we address relevant tree issues and discuss best practices. Our Sustainability Advisory Committee sits as our community tree committee, and together, the city has been recognized as a tree city for 32 years. In 2018, we finalized our urban tree management plan. Following recommendations provided in the plan, we completed our tree canopy assessment in 2019, and now, approximately 5 years later, we are reanalyzing the canopy with a heightened awareness of the increasing heat threat in our city and South Florida in general. And then on to Karen Firehawk. Oh, yes. And she is the Executive Director of Green Infrastructure Center, Inc.
Thanks very much. I'm going to be going to the podium to present. I have a lot of words on my slides, but you will have a copy afterwards, so if there's any key statistics you want to read up on later, you can do that. Just want to move over here. Okay, yes. All right, so today I'm going to cover very briefly tree canopy benefits, just to remind us why this is so important to our city. Setting a goal, so we are going to ask you to weigh in today on the idea of having a goal for a slight increase. We're going to look at canopy needs by different areas. So we looked at different geographies of the city, and then a quick discussion with all of you. I know you have a very packed agenda, so I'm going to talk fast. All right, so part one, tree canopy cover and benefits. All right, so here's where your canopy stands today. I wanted to get to the main point right away. It's about 24%. So just a little under a quarter of the city's urban area is covered by trees. This doesn't include grassy waters because this analysis, we did map grassy waters, but it's really looking at the places where people live, where we need our shade, where we need our air quality. But it's not uniform across the city. So it's not 24% in every neighborhood. So the downtown actually is much lower, about a third of that coming in at around 13%, even though I have a nice picture with lots of shady trees. But as we want to encourage our downtown revitalization or continued revitalization, adding canopy to the downtown remains really important. And then I always get the question, how do we compare to other cities? So we mapped all of these cities but one. And you're pretty similar to Delray and Boca Raton when thinking about canopy cover. But I do want to note that your last study that was done in 2017 looking at your canopy cover found you were at 30%. So if you're doing the quick math there, you've actually lost 6% of your canopy since the last survey was done 6 years ago. And so that's really important to note. We don't want to continue that decline. And even if you didn't vote to increase canopy, you'd still need to actively plant because trees get old and die, just unfortunately like we do. They get diseases, and then storms, of course, take them down as well. So a lot of reasons to have trees. I'm going to fly through these just in the interest of time. But health is a big aspect of why we want trees. They actually clean the air. Even in the neighborhood scale, people have lower rates of asthma because they clean out those particulates, that stuff that comes out of car exhaust. Less crime occurs near trees. There's been a lot of studies done looking at low-income neighborhoods, and the ones with better trees, more trees, had lower crime rates. And then people exercise if they can access trees near where they work. Job development, I won't go into all these details, but it turns out that small companies looking to relocate, look at how green your city is and think about where they want to be. And then even with COVID, a lot of people could work anywhere, and a lot of people pick the greener cities to relocate. So trees and parks attract better paid jobs and a better tax base. And then, of course, they provide more attractive areas for development. My favorite little statistic is people shop longer and spend about 12% more per item. So I kind of joke, if you're on a budget, stay away from the trees. But seriously, people do want to shop more in that night. And this is an example of some ladies having a nice shopping day. So you get more tax revenue when you invest in treed shopping and business districts. And then they improve property values. Again, I won't go into all the details here, but having a tree on a lot can improve the value of that lot by 18%. So you see that a lot. It'll say shady lot or well-treed lot. And then, again, not to go into all these details, but we actually modeled how much air pollutants are taken up by your trees, by every acre of trees in the city. And we see a lot of help with particulate matter, but also for climate change, trees sequester and store carbon, so it helps you meet your carbon goals. They also soak up rainfall. They act like a straw. And we don't want to have a lot of standing water in Florida because we know what standing water breeds, mosquitoes, right? And also flooding. So trees help de-water that landscape and soak up that water and evaporate it. And then we can even look at exactly how much water the trees take up. We modeled the entire city, and we mapped the areas where trees are soaking up the most water. So those are the areas where we really want to retain trees. Your trees right now in a typical storm are taking up 42 million gallons of water. That's water that's not running off and causing flooding. And then larger trees provide the most benefits. And when benefits are modeled, they look at both costs to maintain them as well as the benefits they provide for clean air or stormwater. And a little fact here on the side, we all love our palm trees, but they actually cost more to maintain than they provide in benefits. And then there's a lot of models out there that show how hot will my city be in the future. So I just did this if you were born in 1970, and you can see here down on the your left-hand side how many days were over 90 degrees, and then looking on up to the future, how many more days you'll have it above 90 degrees. But the good news is you don't have to have that future. You could plant more shade trees and cool the city. And then we do what I call my Captain Obvious graph, which, just to summarize it, we looked at the hotness of the city. And you can see how Grassy Waters is really cooling. So the red areas are hottest. And the hotter the area, the lower the canopy that was there. So we can actually look at this on a map, too, and see where you're hottest. And then we can look at ecosystem vulnerability and services. So we looked at the different parts of the city and the income. And the takeaway from this map is that the lower income areas are hotter. And so we might want to target our planting to places where people are less able to afford to buy their own tree. So for having city tree giveaways and that type of thing. So let's talk about setting a goal. Oops, too fast? Okay, so you have 24% canopy, and if you planted all the areas where trees were suitable, now we took out things like soccer fields and places that were too skinny to support a tree, so we already took all that out of the equation. You could get to a max of 30%, but you probably wouldn't want to try to get back to that because there's a lot of reason to have open space. So you've got about a 6% difference. What's a reasonable goal? We're proposing an increase of 1%, just 1% to get us to 25% canopy cover. So we're not proposing to get back to where we were. That would be somewhat expensive. But we can then look at where we want to plant, by which neighborhoods we want to do beautification, if we want to improve health in certain neighborhoods, if we want to prevent stormwater and standing water problems, and support native birds and wildlife. So we actually modeled exactly how many
Excuse me, we
trees
do
you
have a
could put
question
in.
for one of the commissioners, if you
Yes,
don't
sir,
mind.
sure.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you so much. I just don't want to miss this on that last slide. Can you just go into that a little bit more about, I see your note of why we wouldn't want to go to 30%, but if you could just talk about that just a little bit more.
Sure. So open space, like if you had a tomato garden in your backyard, or some people still sunbathe. So we didn't assume that every aspect of every yard could be shaded. We assumed that you're not going to get back to that total.
Was it only private land that you're talking about?
We
or
map
public
the
land?
entire city regardless of who owns it. And then when we talk about the goal of 1%, we're talking about the city. I'm going to get into this in the next slide, but essentially, you own about 20% of the land. That's a pretty typical figure for cities, own and manage. So you can only really set a goal for yourselves for the land that you control. The other 80% of the goal will be borne by the private sector. Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take over
That's
as
okay,
mayor.
that's fine, that's fine. Commissioner Buzzi.
So you said first of all, I wanted to address what you just said. We said we
Yes.
own 20% of the land. I mean, obviously, that's not including Grassy Waters because the city actually controls probably 50% of the land in the city if you include Grassy.
Right.
But when was the last time that this study was done? How long ago? I might have missed that.
We did this using data that was flown last year.
So
the-
we've lost 6% in a year?
No, since 2017, that was the
That's what-
last time that you
okay.
did this similar study.
And was it a similar study? Did you remove the same areas of land
Yes,
such as Grassy?
That prior study looked at with Grassy and without. We also looked at with Grassy and without. So the figures I'm comparing are both without Grassy Waters in the equation.
Not that this is a contest, but those other cities that were up there, I assume they weren't removing vast swaths of land either, right? Probably, like
no.
we did.
No.
Well, I'm just asking in context here.
Yeah.
You know, if we are being compared, because you put a comparison chart up, I'm sure they didn't remove a 23 square mile area in determining tree canopy, right?
Not that I'm aware, no.
Commissioner, I mean, counting Grassy, we of course would rock it for the whole, South Florida, I'm going to say. But the reality is that where people live and work and, move around, where we're trying to cool things down and, make more walkable, isn't Grassy, so that's why we removed it, but we did not remove any of the parks or anything like that either. So you are correct, we would be up at the very top percentage-wise if we included Grassy, but we, for our goal purposes, wanted to pull it out.
One last follow-up.
Yes.
I understand wanting to pull it out because if you go to the very center of Grassy, it certainly may not be providing benefits to downtown with air quality. but it does provide significant benefits to the whole area surrounding it because it's such a large area of canopy. And then all the developments that are around Grassy. So it is a huge benefit to our city, and I don't think we can discount the fact that we do have significant tree canopy in Grassy that benefits the whole area, the
Yes.
whole region.
Absolutely. So we will, in the report, and we have reported this to staff, we include Grassy. And so we're showing with and without, but staff, for brevity, today asked me not to go into the with Grassy, without, with Grassy, without. All the ecosystem benefits, though, that I showed you for air quality, for stormwater, include Grassy. So we're including all of the benefits that trees provide within your entire boundary. But then we're looking at the strategies. We're not likely going to be planting trees in grassy waters. Those trees reseed themselves to a large degree because we're not mowing. All right, so that's the only reason we really need to plant trees in a city is because we're mowing the lawn, right? And so trees don't naturally seed in. But we will report it both ways, absolutely. Yes, you're exactly right.
Thank you.
You're the king of canopy here when you look at grassy waters. Okay, so we looked at how many trees you could plant in your urban area, and it comes up close to about 70,000. And we looked at both large canopy and small canopy. The city is also working on a program to distribute trees to community members. So this is, I think you'll recognize some of your staff there in that picture. They're giving away trees. So the easiest place to get a tree to grow is actually in someone's yard because we're not driving into it usually. We take better care of our trees in yards. They're not so constrained. So the idea is to get the private sector to help us finish the other 80% of that 1% goal. And I don't want to go into too much detail in a long spreadsheet, but this is what we were just talking about. So if we look at what is 20% of a 1% increase goal, that would be roughly around 2,500 trees. So we actually know how many trees you would plant on your properties to get to that goal. And that comes in because you have hired contractors to plant. It's not me and Penny going out and planting a tree on the weekend. This is actually paying for someone to plant them, provide the equipment and the care. It comes up to about $236,000. So there is a cost involved, but you get to decide over how many years you want to achieve that goal. You're not going to do that in 1 year, so 5 years, 10 years, you can play around with that number to decide what you want to spend annually. We also need to spend funding on tree care because now this tree, I would probably take that down because it's just planted in the wrong place, right? It's interfering with utility lines. So when we mapped where you could plant trees, we already took out areas that had overhead power lines and areas that had underground stormwater pipes so that we're trying to suggest places that don't have these kind of conflicts. And then if you think about if you actually inventoried all your trees and you did it at 5,000 trees on a 7-year cycle, you could spend up to $950,000. Why is it worth spending money on maintenance? These data come from staff. I didn't generate this number, but it actually becomes less expensive to clean up after a storm or a hurricane. If your trees are in good shape, they don't tend to fail and they don't tend to drop limbs. And I've seen cities that have really good maintenance have way less cost. All right, so canopy needs by area. Just to note, we've mapped all the areas you could plant trees to soak up the most stormwater. So we know all the spots that are most strategic for that. So orange and red and yellow areas are the best places to plant to get more stormwater soaking up. And then we can look at street trees. We mapped all the streets for how shady they were, and so we know which streets would benefit the most. Those red lines are the hottest streets in the city. Orange is the next hottest. And we can look at safe routes to schools, beautification, green streets, and the available planting area along your streets is about 3%. And then we can look at parks. So we actually mapped all the canopy in every park and looked at how much more canopy you could add, again, not taking away any playing fields or sports fields. All right. And then you can look at neighborhoods. So we looked at the hottest neighborhoods and which ones could take the most trees. Then we also looked at the downtown. Remember I said it was about 13% canopy, but we could definitely plant a lot more. It's got a lot of impervious surface is why downtown is so hot. And then by parcels, we looked at every single parcel in the city, and we looked at which ones were the hottest. So again, we know which is the hottest and which has the room to add the most trees, whether it's public or private. So we might target some of our planting that the city would do to those parcels that are the hottest that you control, or again, as we said, tree giveaways in those neighborhoods. So I thought, you probably thought I was going to have 47 more slides. Thank goodness I don't. So the question to you, and you don't have to decide this today, we're going to be taking this information to the public, but do you think you could support a 1% canopy goal? And this will just help us recover some of the 6% loss that we suffered in the last 6 years. And then the next thing to think about is, can we do even more to ramp up public planting? So this little booklet on the left I wrote, we have a lot of great ideas for planting campaigns and motivating people, and it's even better, people go to the store and buy their own tree, and hopefully we teach them how to plant it correctly. But, you know, teaching people to plant and care for trees is really important. And then I'll just mention the next steps and then kick it back to you for question and comment. We have the community engagement we hope to plan in June, and the staff can tell you more about that. We will have a final report with a goal, hopefully an increase, and action steps for the city to consider to make your canopy more robust. And then a next step for us is to also look at your city codes, standards, and practices. Just how well are you doing with your own rules and your own policies that you're managing here? So with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it back to you.
Thank you. Before you conclude, can you tell us a little bit about your organization? And
Sure. Yeah, we were trying to be so quick. The Green Infrastructure Center is a nonprofit organization. We're working in a region from Rhode Island to Florida over to Louisiana. We've done a lot of work in Florida, and I have family here, so it's really wonderful for me to be able to work here. But we work on showing that nature is part of infrastructure. So trees are green infrastructure, wetlands are green infrastructure, grassy waters is a massive amount of green infrastructure because it's helping us manage our environment and make our communities healthier. So we do all of that mapping and computer modeling, and then we have field staff too. So we've, for example, we ran around the city in orange vests photographing hundreds of trees and just documenting the condition of your trees.
and where are you based?
We're based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. We have offices in Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Mississippi.
Great. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. And this is probably for Ms. Relford. What is the protocol when we find that trees are, that there's damage that's caused by the roots, or, that sidewalks and things are a safety hazard, or if a resident wants to remove a tree that we have included in our shade canopy? What is the protocol for that?
So to begin with, we have an internal protocol that Public Utilities and Public Works follows to when there is an issue of a conflict, and they check in with our city planner, landscape planner, to look and see, is there a way around, are there some root prunings or something that could happen that could save the tree, maybe some root prunings with root barrier. If not, we recognize that not all trees were planted in the correct locations originally, and then there is a permit to remove trees, hopefully replant trees elsewhere. And that's why we were so careful in coming up with this assessment to identify areas that are plantable space. Because, the streets, if we don't have very much space in between the curb and the sidewalk, say, then there may be a small tree that can go there, but we can't put a huge tree there. So we are very sensitive to the ongoing maintenance. And, you plant a tree, you're really thinking about 15, 20 years from now, what it's going to be looking like and doing.
President Ward.
Thank you. When you talked about the $950,000 for maintenance, is that an annual thing?
No, that was over a period of years, looking at a long term.
So what would be an annual amount for maintenance?
So I think we had looked at if we did just routine maintenance on the established canopy that we have, it would, and we said we're going to go through the entire tree canopy every 7 years, that within 7 years, that would cost $950,000. So we're trying to, and, you know, 7 years is like a schedule that has been used, it's recommended. I think that it was in our tree canopy management plan. So you'd basically just divide that 950 by 7.
Yes.
So that would be on top of our existing tree trimming services to go around.
Well, that could include what is already being spent, and it may be that someone, Todd or Andrew, someone from Parks could address this better. But we have dollars that are being spent in the parks, but also, even though our code says that property owners are responsible for maintaining the trees in the right-of-way in front of their property, that's not always the case. And our Parks Department does do some of that maintenance, and in part, that is one reason why we are asking Karen's team to review all of our policies and procedures and our, you know, to see, are we really walking the talk that we're saying? Do we need to put more protections in? And are we adhering, or do we need to change around some of those policies and processes?
One more follow-up, Mayor.
Yes.
When you say it's not always the case, can you, and you know why I'm asking about this, so, you know, and I want to give credit to this department, just so the other commissioners and mayor know, Northwood Hills worked with them on planning an entire plan throughout their neighborhood to provide more shade trees. And, you know, there's one neighbor, resident in particular, who is an arborist or either a hobby or trade, but either way, really worked with you guys well to figure out where to plant things, how to plant them. And I know the conversation came up a lot about down the road maintenance and what that looks like when you've planted a couple, you know, big trees in a swale, who's responsible for. And then I also have another neighborhood with a growing older population who continues to ask me, all of these trees that we planted years ago for shade, they're fantastic, but it's hard for me to continue maintenance or, you know, roots going into sidewalks and things like that. And so I really am trying to harp on that maintenance aspect because I see the benefit of these shade trees. So I'm just trying to understand in what circumstance in that swale do they call and say, hey, can you come out and maintain this tree?
Well, let me go back first to Northwood Hills. That neighborhood association signed a maintenance agreement to take care of the trees that were planted through our program. So the individual property owners are not responsible for them, but the neighborhood association is. We are trying to, where possible, have that kind of maintenance agreement, but as Karen said, sometimes some of the lowest income communities, some of the areas that have maybe rental properties that it's difficult to even get the landowner to take care of the property, let alone the trees that are on the property as well. So there are some areas that are sort of ripe for trying to figure out a solution for that maintenance. As far as who gets what maintenance done and not, I'm going to have to defer to Parks. I don't know if Todd or Andrew would like to answer that. But I would say, and I'll say this for Todd because he may not say it, but when they are working on tree maintenance on city streets that should have been maintained by the property owner, that's keeping them out of the parks. So it's a real balance that they have to walk that line.
Hi, I'm Todd Snyder, Assistant Director, Parks and Recreation. I would like to let you know, like, our first step in the process, we, in the Parks Department, we have 2 certified arborists on staff. So no matter what, we will always come out and inspect the tree's health and provide a report for the homeowner. Our second goal is if it's a risk to the street or they find defects in the tree, then we'll put it on our schedule to take the tree down or whatever we have to do, trim it or whatever is needed. And then our third goal is, intersections, line of sight for stop signs, street lights. That's our other focus. So that pretty much sums up our priorities.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I'm curious about this community engagement, if it's more of a education campaign as well as it really is to get feedback, because I can't imagine anybody in the city saying, no, we don't want any more trees. I just actually had a meeting with a neighborhood association 2 days ago. This was top on their list. I constantly hear it. I think we all can agree with, some of the more common benefits that you mentioned, clean air, shade, but then to hear more about the business impacts and people wanting to move here and just, I've been reading about happiness and mental health and how the effects of trees and greenery has on that. So I too share my colleagues' concerns about maintenance. And I guess, I don't know if it's for this time or another time, but that $950,000 over 7 years, does that include additional staff and resources or contracts to be able to maintain it, or what is included in that?
It really is an estimate looking at the cost expected for a tree, so whether it's a contractor or internal, just sort of like that ballpark estimate number. And as far as the engagement, we really do want to share this information. It definitely will be an educational campaign like we already are doing. But for example, if we have X number of dollars that are slated for tree improvement, tree canopy improvement planting, then which neighborhoods are we going to go first? Well, we already know through this assessment where the hotter ones are, where the health impacts are greatest, maybe where the lower income folks are that couldn't necessarily afford to plant trees themselves. Well, that would be, where we would immediately think to target as a priority. But we have had neighborhoods say, we're not ready for trees yet. So we want some other things done first. And unfortunately, for them, the trees dollars that we had could not be used for other things. So we paused that planting program, and they're working on the other things they want to get ready, and we pivoted to another neighborhood to utilize the money. So we will be looking at not just the priorities that we've identified here, but listening to the neighborhoods to see, who wants them really, who are ready for them, and maybe who has this won't be a deal breaker, but as in the case with Northwood Hills, they were ready to step up and take on the maintenance. So we have to look at the long-term viability of the trees when we plant them as well. Climate change is giving us droughts like we have been in through April and into May. So we've got to make sure that those trees are well established and there's dollars involved in that too.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mayor, you and your administration, to Penny, Karen, and Nicole. Having this data is so important because, and I know we all want to make sure that we're equitable to all of our residents, to all parts of the city, and it's very eye-opening to see those maps. And we're going to get a more detailed report of, I'd like to dive into that a little bit more because I think it is very interesting to see and making sure that we pay attention to the areas that were in the hot zones.
We definitely will give you all a full report to review, and then like I said earlier, we hope to bring it to the commission for adoption. And the data it's so important because we do get communities reaching out to us asking for tree plantings. Often they are in some of our higher canopy areas. It's with folks that have more time to maybe think about improving the beauty or the look of their neighborhoods instead of how am I putting, dinner on the table. So not everyone that needs it has the time, energy, or just wherewithal to even recognize that they could ask for it. And that's where the data really comes in and where we can also explain to those other neighborhoods that, you know, you guys have a 40% whatever their canopy is. We really need to focus on some of our other neighborhoods first.
Well, the question I have for Ms. Johnson and staff, it's one thing to have the data, but are you guys going to put together a proposed plan which includes recommendations for where we plant the trees, keeping in mind the cost of maintenance, et cetera, because we need you to drill down into the data and then come back to us with a proposed plan for where we want to plant, when we want to plant, so that the commissioners can understand what their district might be getting out of this. We can have that kind of conversation, because it's one thing to just have the report, but I would like to see a recommended course of action going forward using this data, so that we can, and then understanding that the budget impacts and the fiscal impacts. So hopefully that's in the works as well.
Yes, sir, it is, Mayor. So we will have a prioritized planting area, and then we can, there may be multiple areas or a larger area as a priority than we may have budgeted for 1 year. So we will be looking at how we can build to address all of those areas.
Well, good. Commissioner Beduzzi.
Thank you. I have a follow-up on the line of questioning that Commissioner Warren and President Ward were talking about when it comes to, the requirements and replacement and maintenance, but more so one of our larger developments on Okeechobee side that borders Grassy Waters has an issue where they have hundreds of shade trees that are compromising the sidewalks. And their sidewalks are, I went and saw it some time ago, and literally there's just sidewalks everywhere that are compromised. And I talked to them about it. I told them, hey, you got to hire a landscape architect or whatever, contact the city, find out what your options are. They are a group that says we don't want more trees because they already have all these trees that are causing problems. And they're told, okay, if you're replacing a shade canopy tree with a palm tree, you're going to need 1,000 of them instead of 300 of them. And so they're just trying to figure out what to do. And do we work with these communities that have a problem where there's hundreds of trees causing problems, and they're having residents that are already sued because of trip and falls and things like that from lifted edges on sidewalks? It's a mess. And they can't plant those shade trees in that small area between the sidewalk and the pavement of the street because of the root structures, I guess. So they're limited in what they can put there if they want to do it the right way, yet they're going to have to replace hundreds of trees with thousands of trees.
So, unfortunately, the planning for some of those communities did not really holistically look at where those trees should be planted and what the longer-term goal would be. Our landscape planner, Tiffany, maybe you'd like to address any of that, but each of those communities have their own landscape plan that was approved, so it is sort of outside of our typical landscape ordinances. And again, Tiffany can fill you in better on that. But I will say, just like Karen had said, palm trees do not give the benefits, and they do require a lot of maintenance that sometimes the communities don't recognize. So I'm hoping that we can work together to find either different locations or maybe a smaller tree that would fit within that sidewalk space.
Okay, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I think that's outside the scope of today's discussion. We do have ordinances in place, and maybe Tiffany, Penny, you all can meet with the commissioner offline. I've dealt with this issue when I was a district commissioner. We have ordinances in place which are very specific. And so, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole in this meeting, particularly considering our full agenda. So if we could keep it kind of at the 20,000-foot level, and Commissioner Baduzzi, if you have more specific questions about our policies, we can have staff talk to you and see if they can work with you in that community. President Ward.
I just have one more comment just to think about, and thank you for your comments, Mayor, about the plan, because, Commissioner Lambert, I agree in somewhat, like, how could someone not want more trees, but my conversations have led otherwise to, it's a lot of maintenance, and then I've got to power wash my sidewalk because of the things that fall, or there's some of the trees that were planted a while ago that do drop those big nuts or the, whatever. And so there's that, and I just want to make sure that when we think about this, Northwood Hills is a thriving neighborhood association right now. It's not a mandatory association. So God forbid they are not thriving in 5 years. What does that look like for maintenance? And so when I think about some of these, older neighborhoods that have, really strong neighborhood associations and money to back that up, and then other ones that don't, I don't want to create a disparity where, well, you guys want trees and you guys can pay for the trees, and all these other communities, they can't and they don't want them and they're in the open. So I just want you guys to be thinking about that as well, so that we holistically have trees everywhere, not just in the neighborhoods that could potentially afford to maintain them.
And that's why we've asked for a specific plan that we can discuss. That staff will bring back to us, because we talk about the hottest neighborhoods are the poorest neighborhoods. And so we've got to keep that in mind when we're coming up with a plan as to how we can address that disparity, keeping in mind the maintenance requirements. So I don't think, we're not going to resolve that today, but as you all work on a plan, let's make sure it's equitable to certainly address, and then that we have a strategy for dealing with the fiscal imbalance, and how do we handle the maintenance requirements. But that's a conversation for another day when you have a proposed plan that we can dig into deeper.
Yes,
At work, Commissioners?
Commissioner and Mayor, I just wanted to say that our internal tree team has been really discussing that issue, and we are really working to bring something to you to address it.
No, that's good, because it's similar to, we do assessments, whether it's for street paving, whether it's for street lighting, but related, and having that data is so important, but usually related to that, we use the reports, the assessment reports, to come up with a plan and a strategy going forward, whether it's where do we put street lights, or which streets do we pave right away. And I assume we'll have something similar, which neighborhoods we're going to get trees for, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Commissioner Lambert.
I just wanted to say I wholeheartedly agree. I think that, we have to look at what are we requiring of our neighborhood associations, because of your point exactly, what will they look like in 5 years? But then there's many neighborhoods and streets that don't even have neighborhood associations.
Totally.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you. We look forward to getting the report, and equally the proposed strategy going forward.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I know that there will be some costs attached to it, so make sure you've run that by the city administrator so that she doesn't have a heart attack when we're having
Would
these
not
discussions.
want that to happen, for
Yes.
sure. And I just want to say, we call this a tree canopy assessment. We probably should have renamed it. It is an assessment and a plan, so for
Okay.
sure you
All
will
right.
be getting those strategies.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all the work that you're doing and helping us understand the importance of trees in our community. Thank you. Okay, we will now turn to the park update. I'm very excited about this presentation. Commissioners, you all know the history of the park, our municipal golf course, and how we have gotten to where we are today. It's a little bit over a year old, and I can't believe the amount of public acclaim that it has already brought to our city. But at the end of the day, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder here, at the end of the day, it's about the path or the programs for our youth. And I think we're going to get some more specific data as to how it's been working and with the youth of our community. I have often said that the folks who donated to the park, and I think they've raised over $50 million, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave and Brian, they contributed to the park not because they needed another golf course to play on. They could play at many of the donors could have played any golf course literally in the nation. But I believe, well, I know that they donated to the park because of what we're going to hear about today, because of what the park is going to be doing, has done, and will continue to do for the youth of our community, the path and the benefits to our youth. So this is exciting. I don't know, Ms. Johnson, did you have anything else to add to that to kind of tee this up, or?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Brian, do you want to start off?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners. We're delighted to be here today. My name is Brian Conley. I'm the General Manager at the park. I've been here since before the beginning of the park opened, April 2022, so now going on my third year. 20-year PGA member came to the park via Atlanta, the Bobby Jones Golf Course Foundation, and that project in Atlanta opened that in 2018. So not native to West Palm Beach, but definitely acclimating to the weather and the city as best we can. And appreciate you guys for your time today. I hope everything over the last year is up to what your standards are for us. I'd like to introduce Dave Andrews, who I brought with me, who's an integral part of our program. He is the director of our path.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having us here, and hopefully those who have had the ability to come out, you've enjoying the park. My name is Dave Andrews. I am the director of the path. I come here via Jacksonville, originally Western Pennsylvania kid, Philadelphia, New York City, and Atlanta. Started in the nonprofit community as well as higher education, and was tasked to help build the path here. So thank you.
Dave will have a moment to go over everything that he's been doing, which is the excitement of what, as the mayor said, was the beginning of all of this. I'm going to go over some of the operations and business statistics with you. An overview of our last year, and it's been a fun one, ups and downs, as you can imagine, opening a new golf course as well as essentially starting a company from scratch. A few of our milestones: we did officially open on April 17th of last year, 2023. We had a staggered opening that saw the golf course with one of our food and beverage outlets open at the same time as the rest of the operations, and the path right behind that. We did not open the full facility at once because of delays in permitting and construction prohibited us from doing that, but through the anticipation of getting the golf course going, we went ahead and chose that date and decided a staggered opening was our best bet. The House, which is our restaurant, which you haven't been to yet, I encourage you to go. It's fantastic coastal seafood with some local chefs and a food and beverage director here from the city. Done a fantastic job, and I think that is just now getting it to hit its stride since October of 2023. And then we reopened our range, which I'll get to in just a minute. It was a very large piece of the puzzle. It has a lot to do with our operation, and that we both focus on golf as a green grass as well as an off-course product. There are crossover golfers, those of you that play the game right now, that are taking over the game that doesn't necessarily consume it in every traditional manner like we're used to or accustomed to in 18-hole, 4.5-hour segments. So the range reopening was definitely something that was a milestone for us. And of course, most recently, in our one-year anniversary, we wanted to do something that few other golf courses, I think, in our situation could do. So what we did on our one-year anniversary was we offered a free golf day. So we had city residents throughout the year who came to us, registered with us as city residents, as we know, who received special rates on fees on many things, including golf there. We wanted to give back for their support over the year to make it a successful year. So we had a free golf day. I'll go over the details about that, which I believe was a Wednesday this past year. A few achievements, and I probably, other than two of these, could tell you that these weren't planned. This is just kind of the beauty of the organic state of this project and just how special it is. We hosted the Steph Curry Underrated Tour in June of last year. We were their first stop on their tour over the summer. They were very well received. It was a wonderful organization. If you know anything about Steph Curry's underrated events starting in basketball, and it's now transcended into golf, we will host those events again in the future. We didn't get one this summer, but they will definitely make the park part of their rotation as they grow. We also hosted a high school district championship. That was not in the cards anytime soon. We were just trying to get the team started. Little did we know that here we are in our first season, we would have everybody from the district come and play in a championship at the park. An Evans Scholar, those of you in the business may or may not understand what the caddy program means to a project, especially a public project like this. To have an Evans Scholar in our first year is absolutely amazing. This person was very deserving of it and had a partnership with one of the other private clubs down here who were under construction. So the park allowed for him to continue his services for his Evans Scholar, which will be a full scholarship to the college of his choice in the Midwest where this scholarship originated. And of course, the match. I can't say enough about the match. Everybody's eyes were on the match. There's 3,000 people in attendance. Some of the eyeballs that weren't necessarily in West Palm, but definitely were looking on the city and looking on the park. It was over 59 million viewers on ESPN, over 23 million viewers on CBS Sports, and then the Bleacher Report, where, as we all know, we're consuming things on more of a social media basis. The Bleacher Report was there, and over 12 million people tuned in to the Bleacher Report to watch the match. So it's all under the lights. It was fantastic. As I mentioned, the statistics I'm going to give you, a couple of the golf numbers are from the calendar year of 2023-2024 from April to April.
And by the way, that's the official logo of the park, right?
That is the parrot. We have many green parrots on property. If you're playing out there, especially in the mornings, the evenings, you'll see flocks flying over. You'll hear them probably before you see them. And then a little homage to the golf course creator, the designer of the golf course, Mr. Gil Hance, is if you see him out on a golf course building and designing in one of the heavy construction equipment pieces, he's most likely going to have a bucket cap on. And then the flag stick that he's sitting on is actually the double pendant flag sticks, which is kind of a call sign for the golf course. So in that 12-month period, we played as budgeted, close to it, over 41,000 rounds of golf. Those include over 5,000 nine-hole starts, so that's everything, 18 and 9-hole starts on the big course. Remarkably, again, I can't say enough about the job the team has done for caddies in the caddy program. We played over 8,500 caddy rounds of golf. For a public golf course like this, that is an astonishing number. We were hoping and would have been very satisfied with a number around 5,000 or 6,000 rounds, so we definitely eclipsed that. The caddies are all employees, by the way, of the club, which we are very proud of. It is not a contract labor business like in many private clubs. They are a very integral part of our operation, and they're employees of the park. They assist in times when they can with Dave and the Path as well, too. Another thing, potentially a little bit of criticism before we opened, but we showed that it was something that people actually love and want to do when you give them the ability to do it, and a golf course that is designed for this. But over 60% of our rounds were walking rounds, and that was throughout the heat of the summer, the heat of the Florida rainy season. Golf is a game that was invented to be played on the ground. It is still a game played on the ground. The health benefits alone, both mental and physical, are astounding. So we gave a choice other than a few hours of the day, and people made a choice. 60% of our rounds were walking. For those of you guys that count your steps, that's 120 miles or 260 billion steps taken at the park. As I mentioned before, we do have a city resident program. City residents may sign up and with a small administrative fee receive a card where they're in our system, and for that year they do receive a benefited rate, many times upwards of as much as 50 or 60% off of our rack rates. We had over 2,200 city residents in that period of time sign up with us. We're anticipating over 2,500 this next year, as we're still getting folks that know that we were there. They're starting to find us still for the first time. Our golf professional staff organized and ran a season, most of which was played by these city residents during the summer for both men's and women's leagues, which are about to start up again. These were 9-hole afternoon after-work leagues that basically the first one sold out in about an hour. So we created 2 leagues, both double shotguns on Wednesdays. They've been met with an amazing amount of support and a lot of popularity. That also allowed us to have a couple of open tournaments. So around the holidays, we'll have open tournaments. We sold out all 3 open tournaments for the holidays last summer. We're having our first one here this coming Monday for Memorial Day, and each event had about 100 players in it. And then again, as I mentioned, our caddy team, which it was designed to support everything that we do for junior golf, as well as for the community, to be a conduit for kids to learn the trade that there is for caddies and how that can benefit them in any industry that they go in after the golf course. We have hired 15 local high school caddies over the last year. We're probably going to have 15 more this summer. And a lot of them are from a result of, and also were the main recruiters for the Forest Hill High School golf team. I'll give you a note about the high school golf team and that story. We didn't even know if there were going to be anybody to play. As I mentioned, the high school golf team hadn't been around since 2018 when the golf course was closed. We had 3 kids come out, one of which was a caddy, and they went into school and recruited. And on tryout day, 2 coaches, they had 22 kids show up. Actually, more females than males, more girls than boys, which was astonishing. So they fielded 2 teams. They played a full schedule of 8 matches. They went 3-6. Sorry, 3-5. Math's not really good. So they did have 3 wins. They looked great. They were in full uniforms that we helped them with their red polo shirts. We outfitted them with clubs. Many of them never had touched a golf club before and obviously didn't own them. We look at outfitting the whole team this year in golf clubs. We're going to have to do some recruiting again because there were a lot of upperclassmen on those teams. So we'll have a lot of juniors and sophomores hopefully get involved with that. But that was a goal for sure, but one in which we thought might take us a few years. So first year goal, it was amazing. A little bit of economic growth and impact past the community or within the community. Obviously, the park's a large company. We employ now over 148 people. I think that number actually is about to creep up over 150, even though we are out of season, which is remarkable. To give you an idea of a golf course, a public golf course, and all the different outlets of businesses we have hired people in backgrounds for agronomy, culinary arts, both accounting and human resources. We are our own company. Education, as Dave will go over, hospitality, all the golf professional staff. There's 7 PGA members on staff. 4 of which are PGA lead cohorts, which is unprecedented for one facility. Of course, retail, and then mechanical engineers. We employ 2 engineers on staff with our golf course maintenance program. Local economy, we provide over $5.5 million in wages that go back into the city. So we definitely are a large workforce, and we have an astonishing number of people that are, as we try to in the golf business, change the narrative that it's a dead-end job that doesn't pay well. A few things that we do provide is for our full-time salary employees, we do provide a very comprehensive healthcare program and a 401k benefit for all, including part-time and seasonal employees, to take part of. So we want to make sure we take care of our employees. They are our number 1 asset, and with 150 people there, it's as those of you know, it's getting harder. So we want to make sure that we retain and we keep our people in the industry. They're our number one asset, as I mentioned. And then, of course, the partnerships is whenever we can, we stay local. We have over 24 companies that we've done business with since construction. Many of those are locally. Some of you may be aware of Floridian Coffee, Graphics Design Signs, Advanced Alarm, Green Thumb, Kennedy Electrical, and then right here on Dixie Hall Hardware's a few just to name. You might have seen these. I think you can see them from Fort Lauderdale. One of the, I guess, challenges and mistakes is there are obviously some that you make, is our nets were not quite high enough when we started. They were 75 feet high, which was the height of which the previous golf course was permitted to build to, and then that's where we kind of started. We thought that would be sufficient, but for various reasons, of which also the golf range going both from east and west now instead of just west to east, we learned very quickly that these nets were not high enough. And then 10 days after we opened, we closed the range, made the decision that it was not worth the potential danger that it would put not only the school but the neighborhood in. And thankfully, as an operation, we were in a position to where we could essentially kind of cut off our hand for a little while until we could put it back on. I don't know a lot of daily fee golf courses that could have gone through this kind of a challenge, especially the way we came out the other end that had the means to fix it in the manner that we fixed it. So an 8-month project saw us raise the nets from 75 feet to upwards in some places of 150 feet. We conducted a ball trajectory study out of a very reputable company in California that came out to make sure that these balls would stay within our property and not be or pose a danger on the street to our north property. The nets were erected and we were able to open the golf range again in December. So the Friday before Christmas, we reopened, and immediately we saw the impact. Our coaching program has taken off since then. The range obviously was busy from that point, but the rest of the outlets, the Par 3 course, the Cabana, all took off that exact week, and in some cases doubled their business. So that project was extensive. Wish we would have done that sooner, but I'm glad that we did that now. And as we're seeing here going into the end of May and June, the benefits of having that range open is tremendous because now it's a full facility. I'll turn it over now to Dave.
Thank you, Brian. So I get asked this question all the time. What do I do at the park? And everybody thinks that when you dress in a polo and shorts or pants that you actually are a golfer. And I think, looks can be deceiving for sure in the golf world. I get to do something that nobody gets to do, and I get to serve the kids of it at a public golf course. This is a special place. West Palm Beach at the park is a one of one. It's a location that will often be emulated in the future, I'm very confident of. But right now, we have the prime location of being one of one. Why? People ask. It's the path. The path its mission is to positively impact lives. What does that mean? What does that mean? For me, it means that we take kids that are proverbial off the path in life. Everybody knows in life there's a path for everyone. Whether that path is in the bunker, in the fairway, down the right road, off the road, in the gutter, whatever it may be. The path is a place that often you find yourself in life. We want to take people that are off the path in life and bring them back on. And golf is just a very small component of it. The path is dedicated to empowering and inspiring the next generation of leaders. We take kids from Title I schools, elementary, middle, and high school, and we empower them. We tutor them. We encourage them. We provide them hope. We give them inspiration. We give them the ability to be a kid again. While the range nets might be high, the proverbial walls of golf are removed when kids step on the property. They don't know any different about the game. They don't know that they can't belong, or they don't know what to wear, or what should they wear, or what clubs do they need. We provide everything for them. I mentioned on that. The path is broken down into a few different programs. The first program is our after-school program called the Fairway Finders. That is our homework help, our tutoring. So we recruit kids from elementary schools through the help of our partners and the principals to find referral-based kids. These kids come to us via South Olive, Palmetto, and Belvedere. We started this year with 2 schools. We've moved to 3. We'll go to 4 for next year. And we employ teachers from those districts, those actual schools, so they can help us recruit the kids. These are the kids that have a need, whether they're failing math, whether they're failing reading, whether they're economically disadvantaged. Those are the kids that we want to serve. We want to bring kids into this program that are the most disconnected. We tutor them. We give them the opportunity to get their grades up. We give them the opportunity to be exposed to a game of golf. We don't force it upon them, but we want to expose them. In addition, new this year, we've expanded the program to incorporate physical education into the program as we identified a need for kids, which was the inability to run, the inability to move without being tiresome. So hiring a PE teacher from our local schools also helped build that curriculum.
They talk a little bit about how the kids come to the park. We're not skimming the most successful ones. Talk a little bit about how these kids end up, how they come to us.
Absolutely. So when I came here, I'm going on my 2nd year, and in order to make a successful nonprofit, you have to listen to the community. You have to build relationships. You have to build trust. And for several months, we spent time in the community listening and learning from every other nonprofit, all the educators, the principals, figuring out what the needs are. As you've heard, Brian and I are not residents here at West Palm, but I've been a resident of a number of communities that I've been brought in to create mission-driven programs in the YMCA. No different. That's what I did here. And I listened to those needs. And education was up of the highest. Obviously, housing is one of those as well. Hunger, physical activity, and the sense of belonging. And so as we started to identify our needs to figure out how we're going to build the programs, we focused all the research that we took into that. We had 2 partner schools initially last spring. We had South Olive and Palmetto. Why? Because they were the closest schools of Title I. They're the kids that we knew without transportation could get here. So I gave spots. I gave spots to the principals and the ESE coordinators and the guidance counselors. I said, I need to find the kids that need us the most. The kids that don't have an after-school program, that don't have a sport, that don't have somewhere to go, that you see in the same clothes every day, that are hungry, that are needing the help. I want them. I want those kids to come into this program because I want to change their life. I want to grow their opportunity. I want them to see something that's so much greater than they've ever seen before. And day one, I'm standing on the putting green, and I wasn't sure anybody was going to come. And shortly after that, we had 18 kids. In our first year, we had 50 kids. Right now, total with all of our programs, we have 82 kids with an 80% retention. Our programs meet Monday through Thursday on the education side, 2 hours a day, split between education, PE, and golf. And we also have art, and we have STEM offered 2 nights of the week. In addition, we have an ACE Academy program, which actually I'm going to my next slide already. We have an ACE Academy program, which is for high school. Partnered with Forest Hill for this year, Palm Beach Lakes for next year. We have a referral-based system that we have kids that are that intern with us. We give them an opportunity to get behind the scenes of what it is to work in the game of golf. In addition, we have our donors, community leaders, speakers that come around to empower them, to tell them the life lessons, that not every line is straight. Not every path is the same way is the same as everybody else. It gives them hope and it gives them inspiration that where they're going in life is actually going to be a really good spot. Mobile Snag is probably our biggest opportunity as we continue to see it grow. Mobile Snag developed after writing a grant at this time last year that went over this past academic year. Mobile Snag was created, for those who don't know, SNAG stands for Starting New at Golf. And as you come into the park to the left, there's a little grassy area. That's our SNAG course. And we developed Mobile Snag to really identify the kids in schools that we aren't reaching, that don't have transportation to get to us, to figure out ways to get to West Palm Beach, get to Northwest Palm Beach, get to West Palm Beach, finding ways to get into those cities, and not in the cities, but those communities and schools. We made it into mobile fashion. Right now, in Mobile Snag, we're sitting around 3,000 kids that we've impacted their life with an experience of golf. We take over their PE classes for the day. We bring out the clubs. We bring out the equipment. We give out hats. We give out shirts. We have a whole lot of fun because that is one of our core values. The mentoring program is another piece that we believe that is going to change the lives of youth. Right now, we only have one, but we believe mentoring is organic. It shouldn't be forced. It's not an application-based process where you're going to have kids that are going to apply into it. We're going to develop relationships with our kids, our teenagers, the middle school kids, the high school kids, and be able to form those one-on-one relationships here at the park. As we look forward to where the path is going to go, we must know that we always have the way of measuring ourselves. We have both quantitative and quantitative metrics. And I don't have the final, I have the pre, would be the start of the year, the midway, which would be around December, and soon I'll have the final. But this gives you an idea of where our kids stand collectively and how they've scored. So overall, in our pre and our mid, 68% of our kids have increased in ELA. ELA is English Language Arts, so that's reading. 91% have increased in math. If you pause for a second, if we take the kids that have grown in 68% in reading, and we take the kids that are in their surrounding communities, the demographics for those kids have really showcased who we serve. I think I passed over that slide. Did you have it in there? It's not in there. Oh, it's here on the bottom. 74% in the very bottom of the Fairway Finder, 74% are female, 61% Hispanic or Latinx. And if you think about that for a second, we brought in a translator to speak with the parents, to speak with the kids, because we can't collectively impact the kids if we don't speak in their native language. We can't impact the families of what they need. So increasing our reading 68% is very good. And I think that'll continue to grow in the coming years. Math, 91% has increased both in all three of our schools, which is astonishing. And if you take the exemplaries here, South Olive grew 94% in math. So we took kids that were not scoring well in math, and we're now at 94%. One student scored 117 points higher, which is probably on a scale of 40 to 50% increase better from beginning year to mid-year. Palmetto scored 86% on English language arts with a exemplar of a 212-point increase. That's a 1 percentile. That's in the red. That student will not pass. That student will be staying at that grade. And in half a year, they've increased at 84%. If we think about our gains, because a lot of schools, they don't score grade levels, they score gains. We don't factor that in, but it's a factor that we want to consider. In English language arts, for all three schools, they had a gains of 13.29. It's not on the screen. But 13 points higher from the pre and the mid. I'm confident that once we have the final, that number will be in the 20s, maybe 25s. In math, the average increase was 21%, 21 points. That means kids are scoring well, they're reading, they're listening, they're being attentive, but we're taking the kids that need us the most. Well, I can't stand here and tell you that we are responsible for these numbers. I wish I can raise my hand and tell you that absolutely we have the best after-school program known to man, but I can't. But if we do recruit the right kids, and we take the kids that need us the most, and we give them the resources, we give them the time, we give them the right teachers, the translators to help, the support, we give the ability for them to be a kid, the success is imminent. We're going to help them find the right path.
And again, Dave, go back to that slide. So the pre-number, that's when they first come in, right? I mean, that's giving us the baseline.
Correct.
Of where they were when the program started. And this information you have here is just based upon midway through the program.
Correct.
And showing that kind of results, but we don't even have the final numbers yet, and I assume you're optimistic that it'll continue in the same trajectory. And again, and this is what I have to continue to emphasize, these kids come to us as referrals from the principals, right? The principal is telling us these are the kids that are most needy. So, you know, and if there's anyone at the school who would know, it'd be the principal. So we're not skimming the cream off the top. Go ahead.
No, this is, I mean, the quantitative side of it is 68% have increased in reading and 91 have increased in math in the midway point. When I received this data, the school principals were actually reluctant. They actually said, hey, I don't think that these are where you want them to be. And I don't have any data. I mean, I'll share data. If this number wasn't that high, I would still share that data with you because it's an accuracy, it's transparency, it's authenticity. It's another one of our core values. Here, I'm confident in the next week, and you'll have an impact report that'll be distributed to all you guys. That number will increase. I'm very confident of that. I can see it. I can see the kids. I know what they're reading. I know how their math scores are. I see it firsthand every day. I get to live this. So I'm confident in what we do. Now, there's a qualitative, because of everything, there's a quantitative, there's a qualitative. And so we developed a couple different studies, surveys, questionnaires to the parents. One being, how fun is it for the kids and from the parent side? And 4.88 out of 5, that's a good Uber driving rating, in case you guys didn't know, is having fun. 94 have shown academic improvement. This is a parent's perspective. Have met a new friend, have built confidence, 94%, and have learned something new at 100%. This matters. This matters to me as a parent. I have a 10-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. I want my son or daughter to meet a new friend. I want my son or daughter to build their confidence. I want them to have fun. We're different. The park is different. The path is obviously a very different part than anything else that you've ever seen. And as we look forward to the future, bless you, we have a success story here of 2 kids that are part of our ACE Academy that are now employed. Now they're not just building their resume, you know, who knows where that's going to take them. Mobile Snag has reached 5 schools and 3,000 kids. That number will grow to another 5 schools in the next academic year. We'll grow to 1 additional elementary school on site, so there'll be 4. elementary schools, totaling a service of 6. Outside will potentially grow to 8 with the help of Pleasant City Empowerment Group. 4 middle schools versus our 1, and 2 high schools. I'm confident that what we do is working. I'm confident that we are changing lives, and we're doing it in a very different state than anybody else.
Brian, Dave, can you talk about the attention of what we're doing here is getting from other communities around the country?
Do you want me to take the first one? When I built the path, I didn't know it was going to be this. I knew that ways that you can change a kid's life is not through a golf club, but it's to help them academically. It's to help build their confidence. It's to give them the same tools that you need to succeed in life as everybody else. As in golf, having a 7-iron in your bag and everybody having a 7-iron would make it a fair game. I never thought that it would become this, and I'm grateful and I'm very honored and blessed every day that I get up, that I get to do this for a living. What has come from this has blown my mind with the number of visitors who have come in from cities from all over the nation, organizations that are well represented in the golf industry, overseas in Scotland. We've had visitors that have come in to see firsthand how we're doing things different. People perceive golf as this elitist, high walls game that it's exclusive. And in order to do something different, you have to be different. You have to walk in that. You have to be a unicorn, which I'll commonly refer to myself as, wearing the purple for it. You have to do something different to change lives. Golf is nothing but a classroom for these kids. They don't feel anything different. But we've empowered other organizations and other entities in and outside the game of golf to do something similar. As I mentioned early on, we're a one of one right now. I don't think that'll be forever. I know a number of organizations that have already mimicked a number of our programs, and I know that'll continue for the life of this. Even for us, as we look at how do we continue to grow, I take that when people come in and they want to learn more about the path and the park, I take that as an opportunity to do better. And how do I build the program out into a satellite location? And how do we figure out how do we serve more of West Palm Beach? Because I'm not happy that we're not serving all of West Palm Beach yet. Because I want to. I want to continue to expand it and find different ways. New cities come in and they ask you how, and I'm just saying we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We're not going to be done yet. But it's so exciting to be a part of this project.
Thank you. First of all, if you come see this, I encourage you to bring Kleenex. A few cities, as you mentioned, just since January, Naples, Tampa, Fort Myers, Delray, Washington, D.C., Southern Ohio, and then most recently, if you read anything last week, Chicago. So.
Questions? President Ward?
Yes, thank you. And this is more for the path. Just first of all, this is fantastic. And I'm so happy because there were naysayers. And I think, Mayor, to your credit and administration, you guys have been doing a fantastic job. You talked about potentially going to other schools, and you're absolutely right. I think this is fantastic. I worry that because, there are schools that are close and there's schools that are far. How do you plan on reaching the schools in other areas? Or do you worry about sustainability long-term? Could you just talk about that? I think you mentioned Pleasant City, which I was hoping there'd be some North End schools in there. So could you just talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah. Absolutely. So initially when the program started, we didn't provide transportation. And that's still very much a question mark for us. Is it needed? Is it not? What's the risk behind it? Serving in the YMCA executive roles for 15 years, there's nothing worse than taking ownership of a kid that doesn't get on a bus, and you open your doors to your program, and a parent calls you and asks you, "Where's my kid?" And so that was a reluctancy on my part to figure out what that may be on transportation. So providing the local schools that could walk in order to have parent transportation, that has been when we first have started. All of our efforts as we continue to expand the program have been northbound. We want to get as close to the border, Riviera Beach, Pleasant City area as we possibly can, which is why we seeked out Pleasant City Empowerment Group, because they actually go around and pick kids up from their house. And that was very exciting for us because we wanted to find kids that are also the most disconnected. We don't want to find a country club, so to speak, of kids and bring them in. We want to find the kids that are the most disconnected. As we look at how do we grow from here, it's very geographic. For me, the maps that are on there from the shade trees and everything, I have those. And I have little spots on there of who do we serve. First and foremost is Title I kids. We want to take those kids that are in the poorest neighborhoods, in the poorest schools, and continue to expand those. We know that no matter what we do, the park is geographically locked on the south end of the city, and also for the educational value of this property is very small. The 2 classrooms in the multi-purpose space would have a cap, and maintaining our ratios of 1 to 12 have always been at our forefront. And the goal of changing the life, we have to know the kids' names. We have to be a part of the program. Our goal was never going to be, we'll have 20,000 kids that'll have an impact. We want to change lives. We want to make sure that we can connect to them. So we have to approach it. We have to approach it very confident that our foundation is built. And considering we've only been open for a year, I'm feeling confident now that we can continue to move it and grow it. Mobile Snag is our first opportunity that we've seen the ability to serve other schools outside of our area. We've recently wrote a grant to be determined, if we get it, for a mobile snag vehicle. So we'll have a van that has all the equipment, and so we'll be able to continue to grow the program and have the experience outside of the park. We've also looked at a couple schools to have a satellite location, and a couple of the schools would have empty classrooms and field space, so we can replicate it, because we do believe that there's a feeling that we want when kids walk on property and it's a golf course. There's a feeling that we want, because I can't change their mindset about golf if I do it in a football field. I can't give them you're welcome here and whatever you're wearing, barefoot, T-shirts, whatever. I can't give them that feeling unless they're on a golf course. So finding out a ways to have the educational impact and the snag impact, as well as the transportation to bring those kids in to see the golf course, would be our forefront. Hold on, this sustainability, my apologies, the second part of that. I'm assuming you mean financial. And so the path exists right now with underneath the umbrella of the trust, the West Palm Beach Community Golf Trust. In addition, the park is the umbrella of the LLC, is how it's broken down. The path exists as right now as the entity that the trust continues to fund. Right now, there's an endowment that it's being that has been formed that will have the path to operate for perpetuity. In addition, there'll be a gap, I believe, in the coming years that we'll see a fundraising opportunities. Our first year, we didn't need to see the fundraising opportunities prior to seeing what our needs are. How does the program grow? I was given a blank slate. This gentleman hired me here, and I had a blank slate, no budget, to build the best community program that exists. And I can tell you from 15 plus years in the nonprofit sector, you don't have that. You don't have that. You have, hey, here's $200,000, here's $1 million, do what you can and save every dollar you possibly can. That wasn't the case here. We had the ability to build the best community programs that exist, and I'm really confident that we have that. How that will continue to operate will be very much through our community support, our leaders, our donors. Having additional fundraising opportunities will for sure help us impact it. But I don't have any fear that the path will disappear tomorrow. We have enough people that have been invested into this. As the mayor said, a number of the donors gave for this particular project and are very invested in what we do.
Awesome, thank you.
Another thing, another advantage is, for those who remember the old golf course, it was a community meeting place. And can you, Brian, Dave, talk a little bit about what Friday evenings are at the park and what it means to the surrounding community?
Yeah, we could absolutely talk about it, but until you see it, or I wish we had a video of it, maybe, perhaps, we don't, but last summer, we were just trying to get folks to realize we were here. So Friday nights just happened to be something Dave did where we didn't have any of the schools there. Fridays, the schools were off, so we started with arts and crafts just to give kids something to do, so we had one of the teachers stick around with arts and crafts on a table under the breezeway out back, nearest to the cabana, and then the putting course in the par three, and it grew. It started out with a couple of families in the neighborhood. I think maybe we saw one night where it was approaching 100, and we thought, man, this is awesome. So now there's been nights where I think the head count, which hard to completely judge, is somewhere between 300 and 500 people. The kids take footballs and soccer balls out onto the nearest parts of the golf course where they're not obviously in any harm's way. As the golfers are finishing up, we have lights, so it's obviously at dark, so the golf is mostly concluded by then. The families around the cabana and the breezeway. The putting course is free at all times, so they play putt-putt if they don't want to play on the par 3. The par 3 for 13 and under is still free, so the kids can go out and play the par 3. And then obviously, like I said, having that driving range there and not that empty space completed that Friday night look. It was successful before that, but you kind of looked over there and you saw this empty space with all those TV monitors and everything, and you wanted to go kind of do it, but you couldn't. But once that opened, then Friday nights took off. And now our goal is to try to see what other nights we can kind of take over. But in that neighborhood, I can tell you from the number of golf carts and some of the places we've had to be creative with parking, we've taken over Friday nights for sure.
Any other questions, comments, Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. You answered all my questions, Dave. But I did just want to comment about Friday nights and all other days that are there. Is one of my favorite things to do around the city is when I go somewhere is to ask people, oh, where are you from? Are you in the neighborhood here? And on those Friday nights, there is such a variety of people from the neighborhood who I have seen a mom on a bicycle with 2 little kids on the back traversing to the park, as well as talk to people who have come from Del Rey and Boca and other parts of the county to enjoy this facility. And to hear the strides that we're making with our kids is phenomenal. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of your efforts.
Thank you.
By the way, those who didn't catch the reference to the interest from Chicago, that was former President Barack Obama, who came and actually played the course. And he's an avid golfer. He could have golfed at any golf course, some of the finest ones in our county, but he chose to play the park. And I had a chance to talk with him briefly before he went out for his round. He was interested because there is a public course near where his foundation is located in Chicago. Jackson or something?
Jackson Park.
Jackson Park. And he said that's where he learned how to play golf, paying $18 a round. And so he's very interested. And since then, I think there have been at least 2 or 3 other members of his staff who've come back to play and also to talk to Brian and Dave about what we're doing here. But he said that's where he learned to play golf, $18 a round, and it's right adjacent to where his foundation is located. So he's very interested interested enough that he would take time out of his schedule to play the park, interested to see if they could do something similar with Jackson Park in Chicago. Yeah, it is the word is out there as to what we're doing. And thanks for the report. Particularly thanks for all the statistics and data that we're collecting about the positive impact we're having on the kids, because in my view, it's all about the kids. That's how we ended up here, I think. Any other questions, comments, commissioners? All right, guys, thanks. Great.
More to come.
Okay, and whoever designed this agenda. This is very smart to have a report on the state of education from one of our school board members following up on this presentation from representatives of the park. School board member Edwin Ferguson, representing District 7. Ms. Johnson, do you have any additional things you want to say to tee this one up?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Mayor. As you and the commissioners will recall, School Board Member Ferguson was scheduled on your city commission agenda and provided an update, and there was just so much more to report. So we asked him to come to the work session so that he can do a full presentation and update to the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, Madam Administrator, and everybody else who's in the room, and I guess who may be watching us online. Going to do a little better job of digging down into the presentation that Madam Administrator mentioned. I was told to just use the arrows here, so I hope I'm not messing anything up.
Someone else,
I love that logo. It says, you know.
So just arrow right to move forward. You can just use the mouse. Okay, that'll work. Thank you, sir. All right, so yes, so I want to give Mr. Mayor, you and the commission, and kind of overview on how our city schools have performed over these past 5 school years. So of course, we're close to wrapping up this school year 23-24. So this data is from the school year starting 2018 through 2023. So obviously this is very much so lagging data, but I do think that it speaks to certain things that we as the district are aware of and things that I think you as the city can help us kind of facilitate in terms of growth across all metrics. So I know you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you all remember that I kind of got into the whole business about kindergarten readiness, and those who start behind tend to stay behind, and those who start ahead tend to stay ahead. And I spoke about district averages and things of that nature. So I think I first need to kind of define what I mean when I was referring to district average. So for example, kindergarten readiness, when you see the district average is 46%, what that means is that 46% of all children in Palm Beach County in public schools are kindergarten ready. I don't think that's great. So what kindergarten readiness really means, how we assess it is we look at things such as the following. Are you able to properly hold a writing instrument, a pen or a pencil, like this with an alligator grip, if you will, versus the baseball bat grip that many children will hold the pen or pencil with in kindergarten? Can you identify your name? My name is Edwin. So if I saw it in written format, I can identify that. Colors. There are many children in kindergarten, coming into kindergarten definitely, who don't know, at least can't verbalize red, blue, that yellow tie, etc. That's a problem. Counting to 100 or even 20. There are kindergartners who can't do that. They don't have that mastery when they're coming in. Recitation of the alphabet. These are some of the very basic metrics that we use to assess whether a child is ready for kindergarten. So again, so when you see that 46%, only 46% of our children in Palm Beach County can do those very basic things, a red flag should definitely go up in everyone's head who cares about Palm Beach County and the city of West Palm Beach. So in regard to kindergarten readiness, over the last 5 years, looking at the results, you'll see that the city has generally been below the county average. And when we look at it from more of like the last 2 years, we see that there's been a drop. Now, it's very difficult to kind of truly pin the reason for that fall. When I spoke with staff, they said that the way the kindergarten readiness was assessed last year changed. Like some of the metrics were different. So they're of the belief that we'll see our kindergarten readiness scores for this school year increase over what we saw from last year. But the fact remains that as a general rule, this city performs well below the county average, which is a problem for me as a lifelong resident of West Palm Beach. And we'll speak about some things that we can do to help improve that moving forward. So when we get to the issue of mathematics, so again, the district average. Now this is a little bit different. For kindergarten readiness, the district does not use a 1 through 5 metric. It really is simple as teacher Ward, she has these 20 children. She makes an assessment as to whether they are kindergarten ready. She reports that to the principal. The principal reports it to the district. As to math, though, there actually is a 1 through 5. So 3 is, for lack of a better term, a C. 4 would be a B, 5 is an A, 2 is a D, and F will be 1. So we see that the district average is at 55. When we look at the city schools, personally, I don't count schools like Bach Middle and the School of the Performing Arts because they are largely comprised of children who live outside of the city of West Palm Beach. So that's not really an apples-to-apples assessment if you look at them. I'll also note, and you can clearly see it by the graph here, for most of the slides that I show you, all of the slides that I'm going to show you, Bach Middle, School of the Performing Arts, those type of schools always perform well above the county average, but that really shouldn't be a surprise to you because those, generally speaking, are children who come from homes, if you will, that properly prepare them. Like I said, children who start ahead tend to stay ahead. Those who start behind tend to stay behind. But I don't want to count, like I said, a Bach or School of the Arts because they have children who may be from Boca or Wellington or Jupiter. Again, they're not West Palm Beach residents. So they kind of throw things off. But even in looking at what we have here in regard to mathematics, 17 city schools were included. 10 of them are District 7 schools. So the greater majority of our schools in West Palm Beach are on the east side of the city. District 7 covers the predominant part of the east side. So the greater majority of our city schools are going to be, my schools, for lack of a better term. And so what we see over the last 5 years is that only 3 of the city schools have met or exceeded the county average out of the 5 years. Again, that's problematic for me. We're meant to be the leader of this county, in my opinion, and so I think that should be reflected in our students' performances. And then when you look at the last 2 years, when I went through the data, there were only actually 3 schools, UB Kenzie, which is a District 7 school, that jumped from 39% to 46% from year 2022 to 2023. Bear Lakes, which had a minimal gain from 26 to 27%, and then Roosevelt Middle, which also had a fairly minimal gain from 35 to 37. But over these last 2 years, we see that most of the schools have kind of had a falling off. Again, when I asked staff as to reasons for that, not really getting anything beyond, well, the metrics in terms of how we evaluated the students change. And so now the teachers have to kind of relearn, if you will, how to teach to the students. So I know that Superintendent Burke did a really good job, I witnessed this, of getting a lot of our department heads out of the district office down on Forest Hill, out to the schools of need to help the teachers better prepare their students for the test that they're currently taking right now. So we feel very confident in saying that next year's results will be appreciably better than what the results were from 2023. But again, my bigger point is if you look at it even over 5 years, we in West Palm Beach are lagging the county, and the county cannot be as successful as it needs to be if the city of West Palm Beach is not near or at the head of the line. Geometry is an interesting metric to look at. So you all can kind of see what schools we have here. Again, Bach Middle, I don't count Bach Middle. Bear Lakes, Coniston, Yeager Middle, Roosevelt, the School of the Arts, again, I exclude them, Forest Hill and Palm Beach Lakes. Middle schools scores generally are going to be much higher, but think about the student that's going to be taking geometry in middle school. That is going to be someone who has already exhibited a mastery of math, so it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that that student is at a 3 or better when it comes to the geometry evaluation. Conversely, Forest Hill and Palm Beach Lakes, as you can see by these 5-year scores, they tend to lag the district average. So we'll speak about ways in which we can address this, but the numbers do speak for themselves. One thing I will notice, and I ask you to take notice of, as well as look at a school like Coniston. Coniston does not have 5 years worth of scores. That will let you know that they didn't have even one student for year FY19 and FY22 who sat for the geometry evaluation. So again, the more students we can push toward these higher classes, the better off we'll be long term. Algebra, again, same thing as we said with geometry, so I do not want to belabor the point. Should not surprise anyone that the middle school scores for algebra tend to be a lot better than the high school scores because, again, those children are kind of ahead of the curve, if you will, in terms of their preparedness for success in math. I'm pushing through these additional slides because, and I'm sorry, I meant to give you all a chance to download this slide deck. So if you want to take a moment right now to scan that QR code, everything that I'm sharing with you right now, you'll have on your phone. You can share it amongst your friends or whoever. I just think it's important to always kind of get everybody the resource and information that I'm looking at, because maybe you'll see something that I don't see, and hopefully you'll speak to me or somebody else in the district so we can kind of help get this thing right sooner than later. But again, if you scan that QR code, all the information that we're discussing, you'll have access to. And it's actually that QR code. I apologize, you all. All right. So now going to science. Science is always an interesting one in my opinion, because the district averages at 51%. So basically half of the students in high school, generally, high school and 8th grade, I believe, who are taking this evaluation, they are at a 3 or better. That's not so great. And again, if you look at Bach, probably to no one's surprise, every year they're well above the average, but again, that shouldn't be a surprise. We know that those students generally come prepared for success, and they are very successful. But when we look at our other, what I would call our city schools, I don't remember, none of the schools actually were at a 3 or better for at least 3 of the last 5 years. So I guess the challenge is, how do you make science more exciting? Now, that's where I'm going to stop talking, because I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm not in the classroom, so I don't want to opine on that. But I can tell you that looking pretty much across all districts except for maybe Board Member Barbier's district and maybe Board Member Brill's district, those are districts of West Boca and West Delray. The rest of the county does seem to struggle with performance on science. I don't know. But that definitely is something that we know, especially where we're going as far as Wall Street South and what have you. We definitely need to see more students here, more local residents here that are prepared for those jobs, STEM and what have you. So this is definitely something that we need to work on. Biology, again, middle schoolers taking biology, they're almost at 100%. That shouldn't be a surprise. Forest Hill and Palm Beach Lakes, the district average is at 63. Again, we see that our local schools are lagging, but I will say this, I have a lot of conferences with the chief of schools, Mr. Ed Tierney, about this fact. In West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, Belglade, a lot of the so-called urban centers, I noticed that, hey, there's this lag here. We have to do something about that and not just talk about it. So one thing that the district has done, they're being much more intentional about putting kids in accelerated classes. The point being that a child will, the same way a child will meet your expectation if you don't think they can do anything, they also will meet your expectation if you say to them, hey, I believe, Keith, I think you can do this. I know you haven't been in any advanced placement classes up through the 6th grade, but guess what? This year in 7th grade, we're going to put you in an AP math class or AP science class. We're seeing very positive results from putting kids on the fast track, shall we say. And so that's something that the superintendent and, again, his staff is very much committed to. And I'm confident in saying that over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll finally start seeing this so-called gap, if you will, between the haves and the have-nots close in terms of how they perform on these standardized tests. U.S. history, you see the district average is 62. History class, I'll say this, in speaking with teachers, U.S. history, civics, those are not necessarily considered particularly challenging classes. So as a result, honestly, you see the district averages are much higher. So for example, U.S. history is at 62, as compared to, say, kindergarten readiness or one of the other measures that we saw earlier, 46%, 47%. The data in that regard speaks for itself, so I don't want to linger too long on this slide. Civics as well, you can see it's at 65%. Not a particularly challenging class, so most students do appreciably better in it than they would in your conventional English language arts, science, etc. This, I think I blew past it, I'm sorry. There was a program, they pulled it out. Paper was a tutorial service that I was hoping that we as a district could have maintained, but we're not going to continue using it, I guess, for budget purposes. But what was great about it was a tutorial service that a student, whether they were fluent in Spanish, Haitian Creole, or a number of other languages, they could have called at home if they didn't have a parent who could assist them with, say, their algebra or their science. They could call to speak to someone in their native language who could assist them with their homework assignment and things of that nature. Unfortunately, I frankly don't think we did as effective of a job as we could have or probably should have in terms of letting the community know about it, because every time I was mentioning it to you and other commissions, you didn't know about paper, and I thought that was very problematic. We've had that on the books. We had that on the books for quite some time. I believe predating even COVID, I believe. But in any event, as of right now, paper is unfortunately going the way of the dinosaur. But having said all that, I think there are a couple of things, and the city of West Palm Beach, and I'll say what I've said to other municipalities as well, that you all can help with. I think the kindergarten readiness issue is very much something that's been overlooked, and we can't really afford to look at it. It's not sexy in terms of, you won't necessarily see the benefits of focusing on kindergarten readiness right now, but again, having foresight for 10, 15, 20 years down the road, this is how you have a community that is ready and willing to, able to be gainfully employed. You'll see crime rates dropping. You will see, if this had been something that frankly we at the county had focused on 20 years ago, you would have had fewer people right now who weren't able to support themselves by way of paying for their own housing. Kindergarten readiness is the foundation for, in my opinion, a strong and vibrant public education system. So I'm asking you all to help us in that regard. To that point, one thing that I help advocate to get to the city is the Bezos Academy. So they have a program that's down at the FAU campus, which is in Boca. It's going to be opening here in October. That can be a game changer for many families here in the city. So basically, families who are at the poverty level, let's just say it what it is, they can apply for enrollment to the Bezos Academy. What we did that is different from any other Bezos Academy is we insisted on 20% of the seats being allocated for students who will otherwise attend Roosevelt Elementary. I didn't spend a lot of time digging down into Roosevelt Elementary's kindergarten readiness scores, but you all can see that they are woefully low, even in compared to the other schools here in the city of West Palm Beach. So my thought was, hey, if we get them into this Bezos Academy, 10 hours a day, free of charge, mom and dad can look for the jobs or whatever the case may be. They don't have to worry about how do I get to the school by 1 o'clock, because normally with the Head Start programs and things of that nature, you have to make preparations to pick your child up in the middle of the day. Like, Mr. Producer, how would you do that? You got a deposition at 1. How's that going to happen? So now they have coverage for their child, educational coverage, if you will, opportunities for their child through 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to be a game changer. And then that other 80% of the seats, that's just going to be a regular lottery, just like a Suncoast or something like that. So there's a possibility that even a larger number of those same students in that Roosevelt SAC and Pleasant City and UB Kinsey as well, they can get a seat at that table. It's going to be a game changer. So I'm definitely asking you all to kind of promote this. The registration period ends in the end of the summer. I'll get you the exact date. I'm drawing a blank on it, but I have August in my head, the end of August. The school will start in October.
July.
July? So the end of July? Thank you. So it's coming up fairly soon, roughly 2 months away, so we need to promote that as much as possible in this local area. I think that'll be great. Also, in regard to city assistance, I've always advocated for cities to help, by way of financial contributions to the school. I think that when you speak to the majority of your principals and specifically your teachers, it always comes down to economics. Not having enough money to get pencils and pens and what other things that they know from their time as a teacher, 10, 20, 30 years on the front lines, they know are essential to making sure these children have every opportunity to excel. So I know you all have heard about Wellington's annual gifting to their schools. That's awesome. I'm sure many of you have heard about what happened in Delray here in the last 2 months. They have a 6-figure, I believe it's 200,000 or so, grant that they're going to divvy up amongst their schools. Boynton Beach has somewhere in the range of $900,000 as a one-time donation that they're giving to their schools for purposes of resource allocation, things of that nature. In the city of Riviera Beach, I'm working on something with them that actually is more substantial than that, so I don't want to jinx and speak to the number, but it's something that's coming out in the pipes. And so again, City of West Palm Beach, I'm asking you all to strongly consider something on a comparable scale. The majority, I will say this too, the City of West Palm Beach and Riviera Beach comprise the better part of my schools, so I'm intimately aware as to the performances, the successes, the failures, if you will, of those schools. And I do know that with a little extra push financially from the city, we can do some great things. And so I invite you all to consider that. I don't know your budget, so I don't want to be presumptuous there, but I am asking for some assistance.
First of all, we are contributing, okay?
Yeah.
But secondly, it's a little bit disconcerting to me that the school board, with your budget, will come to a city asking for money.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the needs are there, then you should budget accordingly. Now, we're doing what we can as a city, but a school board member should not come to the city with their hand out asking for more money. when you all have a significant budget.
Yeah.
So we're doing what we can, but we don't run the schools. You all run the schools.
That
The
was gonna be
schools are in
a-
our city, and yes, we are budgeting some money for it, but you as a school board member should tell your staff to step up to the plate if they need, if you're aware of these additional resource needs.
The greater majority of the district's budget is salaries.
Well, that ain't our fault.
Well, I mean, that's just what it is. And I didn't mean to offend you, but I would say
I'm not
this.
offended.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm
good.
not offended.
Good to know. So what I was going to say too, also, aside from monetary contributions, there's another way that persons in the city and outside the city can help. Be involved in local SACs. So the gentleman who presented to you before spoke about Title I. So that's generally going to be a school that has children who are at a certain level, effectively at the poverty level. All of the schools in West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, all the schools in District 7, I'll be honest, have a very poor SAC attendance. And the good thing about it is you don't have to have a child that attends that school. You just have to be a resident or a business owner, which frankly would be everybody that's sitting here. I presume it's evidenced by the fact that you are at this meeting today. So whether it's UB Kinsey, whether it's Pleasant City, whether it's Northmore, Northborough, you have an opportunity to be engaged in the conversation as to, hey, what are we doing and what can we do to improve the overall performance of the children, as far as that goes. And that's something that, to the mayor's point, would not cost you all anything other than time. And what is our most important treasure here other than our children? So we really need to do all we can. And what I've been saying down at the district is we can't afford to have a bad year when it comes to education, because that's little Joe's first grade year. We got to get it right. That's little Edwin's second grade year. We got to get it right. So being involved with the SAC is something that you all can do, and it doesn't cost you anything. But I still stand on what I said, and I respect the mayor's position as well. But this is where we are. But I hear you what you're saying, Mayor, and this is where I am. So if you have any questions beyond what I just said, I'm happy to answer them. And again, Mayor, thank you for giving me the chance to come here and speak to you and the commission and everyone else in a more in-depth
Thank you for the
conversation.
presentation. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I just have a few comments. Just want to say thank you for bringing up pre-K readiness. I think, many of us attended, I think it was a community foundation luncheon a few months ago where they talked about, getting to the root of the causes instead of just, at the bottom of the river fixing, and finding out why is this keep coming down the river, but going up the river and working on that. And I think that that's what pre-K and kindergarten readiness helps us to do. And I appreciate your ideas for ways that we can partner because, while I agree with the mayor that, the city, we want to stay in our lane, but there are ways that we can partner through SAC, through the grant program that the mayor and the city launched recently, as well as, if there are opportunities for us to write letters of recommendation or partner when you do go to organizations to get other programs at our schools, we're happy to do that. And then in the past, your predecessor did come to the city with, ideas and ways that we could help on whether it was sidewalks or crosswalks or blinking safety lights or things that come within the city's purview. And I know that we worked on a list of those throughout the past years and, happy to consider those again if you have those in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you very much for coming and providing this level of detailed information to us. I think it's important that we really do drill down and look at our relationship to education and how it impacts everything. It is absolutely a ripple effect. When you look at the health of a community, the health of a city, it absolutely depends on the quality of education received by all of the participants. I just wanted to say thank you very much. It was very enlightening. I had not had access to that information prior to this, so I'm looking forward to you continuing to share this throughout other communities, but through other groups and organizations to be able to involve them and let them know how important their participation is on the outcome of our children and our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, commissioners? All right. Again, thank you, School Board Member Ferguson, for this information. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
Okay, item 4, Workforce Housing Incentive Ordinance Update. Ms. Johnson, you want to tee this up, or somebody else tee it up? Okay, Mr. Fauna.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Armando Fana, Assistant City Administrator. So today we're gonna talk about some of the efforts that have been ongoing when it comes to workforce and affordable housing that have been done by city staff. And I want to thank particularly Development Services, Housing and Community Development, and our legal team that have been working very hard over the past year, really, to try to formulate strategies and code changes that will help to incentivize workforce and affordable housing. And I also wanted to add that we're going to talk about particular code changes that we're going to be presenting to you to help facilitate the production of workforce housing and affordable housing. And there's been a lot of efforts on the state level as well. And a lot of the concentration has been on that workforce housing, missing middle, so-called housing affordability. But the city's also working on a lot of other efforts on top of this that have bared fruit. We're working with the Housing Authority, both the county and the city housing authority. We've developed projects that have been in conjunction with the low-income housing tax credit. And both of those, or all those programs, serve the lower income echelons of housing, which is a huge need as well as the folks who are experiencing homelessness. So I want to make the point that there is no magic bullet, whether it's the state programs that are coming out or the city programs. It all comes in conjunction, and we've been very successful, I think. I mean, look at our production over the last several years. It exceeds anything else in the county, exceeds most cities throughout the state. So we've had tremendous production. The mayor got recognized for that recently, which is a reflection of what city has been able to accomplish over the last few years. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So just a quick overview. HB 1339, which came into House Bill 1339, which came into play in 2022. The city had an effort in order to create a city resolution, which you all passed in December of 2022, that somewhat mirrored what the state was trying to do in terms of incentivizing workforce housing. Those efforts have bared a lot of fruit, and I'll get into that in a minute, but they were superseded by state, for Senate Bill 102, which is better known as the Live Local Act. That eliminated some of the provisions that we were relying on in order to increase production, particularly just removing residential as one of the areas that would be impacted. And so we moved ahead. We were able to take advantage of Resolution 30622 for a short period of time through July of 2023, and that has led to 7 projects that are on the either in production or pre-production, with a total of 439 workforce units. So that was just in a small period of time utilizing our local ordinance. So having seen that, having seen the production that we got out of that, city staff went back to the drawing board to begin to look at what we can do in order to modify our existing code so that it's is not in conflict with Senate Bill 102, with the Live Local Act, but produces more units than the Senate bill would by itself. Let's talk a little bit about the Live Local Act, because it was updated just this previous session. So, and sometimes you'll hear about developers who want to come in and want to take advantage of the Live Local Act, but then when they actually get to read the details of it, they pull back. And so this is another reason why we're doing our local ordinance changes. So the changes that have been made recently, 40% of the units have to be affordable in order to be able to qualify for the Live Local Act for a period of up to 30 years. You have to maintain affordability for up to 30 years. At least 65% of this total square footage has to be for residential purposes. And then when it comes to land development regulations, there's still applications of land development regulations, local land development. So one of the things you hear a lot about is about height and density. So when it comes to height, it is the highest height within a mile radius, the base height within a mile radius of where the proposed project would be. When it comes to density, again, we go to the base density or the base FAR, up to 150% of what the base is in the city. And I stress the base because the base density or the base FAR is where the starting point is, not where you can get additional densities in FAR. So as an example, CMUD. You're starting with a base height or you're starting with a base density, and then you get additional density or height with incentives. For the application of Live Local, the base is where the maximum height is for the city and for the purposes of deciding how far up they can go. So 150% of that base, and it varies in different districts. I don't think we've had one developer yet come in with the Live Local Act. So, but I did want to cover it because it's important that you understand there are state allowances that developers can take advantage of. But to this point, they've actually been more interested in taking advantage of our local incentives, and that is what our staff is going to get into now. So you can hear what we've presented already to developers and gotten input on, and what we're presenting to you now. And I'll turn it over to Dodie.
Good morning. And just to follow up, Kimberly let us know the governor did sign what is the latest version of Live Local last week, which is Senate Bill 328. And from what, just to follow up on what Armando was saying, the production of units that we got under our program were pretty substantial. And you may recall that we came back to you through the EAR process and said, we're going to amend our comp plan so we can keep doing that. And that's exactly what we've done. We've gotten approved through that process. So now we're developing the code language. We've had the discussions with the development community that's been involved. We've gotten a little bit of feedback, but pretty much they're supportive of the direction of the program. We have come up in the code language. We're literally going to take it to the planning board tomorrow night. We're trying to keep the process moving. This program is very similar, and I'll go through some of that just briefly, but there's some provisions in the code language that will deal with what we have to do under the Live Local Act today is we need an administrative process should someone come in. Part of what we were doing anyway is creating an administrative process, so we've been able to piggyback that in the code language that we've drafted. The other side of it is Angela Van and I, and along with Jennifer, a lot of discussion both with Kimberly and Nancy and Rick and Armando, we've been talking about the criterion just to make sure that we have good criterion when projects come in because we're sensitive to existing communities. By the same token, the city has been very open to the policy of supporting the public benefit of building housing and looked at it in terms of its value overall to the community. And that's really big. You guys have been doing this for years. And if I step back, I've been working in housing for decades. My thesis work was in housing. And the fact that you commit to doing what you say you want to do for housing is making a difference. You are producing units. So it's a big deal. One of the things that we did now is we created in our own comp plan the provision that allows us within the multifamily residential district to as much as double density with criteria that's based. We also allow in non-residential districts and in residential districts greater intensity, but we also allow for residential and what would be non-residential districts. Again, they're limited in terms of their applicability in some of the industrial areas. This is very similar to what we did under 306. It is also consistent with the Live Local Act. What is new in the code language, and part of what we had talked about, was creating a tiered process to continue to expedite projects. We have what basically are 3 tiers or 3 levels of review. The first tier is we saw particularly smaller projects or projects that were related to, like the Housing Authority came in, wanting to be able to do a project. They had to come through the exact same process as a larger development that might have greater density requests associated with it. So what we now have is a tier that allows for an administrative review along with maintaining the special review that goes directly to the commission. One of the things that we want to be able to do is sort of shake out projects as they come in the door. And again, we're required under the Live Local Act to have an administrative process anyway for if anybody meets that criteria. But we also knew that we had projects that were coming in the city that were, to be honest, even less onerous in terms of any impacts, and we wanted to create a mechanism to get them through the process. We also know that one of the things we saw typically was this, what I would call doubling of density, but they wanted to increase their density to begin with before they doubled, because they were trying to maximize to 64 DUs an acre. 64 dwelling units an acre is basically the max of our program, and that's maintained by the comp plan language. We also have criteria for any of that review. But what we said is, if you're not looking to increase your density to that extreme, even if you're in a higher density now, if you're not going to go above 40 DUs an acre, we'll consider you in an administrative process. And the reason for that, again, is we're trying to shake out the process and the timing, because we know time is money to these projects. Additionally, the special review will be like it's always been. We're coming to commission. If we think a project has greater impacts, that decision will be made, that it will go through special review. And what happens then when it goes into that process is that it comes directly to the commission, and then it comes back to us, just like we've done in the 306 projects, for final site plan. But we'll conditionalize anything at that time. All of these projects will have a housing incentive agreement that we work very closely with through the process with Housing and Community Development. One of the things that has come up that, and Armando alluded to this, is you also have many other programs that are going on in the city related to housing. We've had a lot of internal discussion because we want you to have a city housing program, not all these offshoots. Try to make it so that this is an overall program, easier for when folks come in, but also for us to be able to manage and implement and have consistent documents and policies so that as we move forward, we're able to be more effective with both time and money on the city side and for those that are coming in to actually produce units in the city. All of these programs, or all of these tiers, have the ability to have waivers and variances. The waivers and variances that are created allow for consideration of the land development regulations, and I'll go through that in a little more detail. Again, if they need greater relief and they are a more intense project, just like today, they would come back to the commission through the what we call the special review process. The other thing that we've done, and we did this through the EAR amendment so that we're carrying it over into the code, is created provisions for existing plan developments and for our community serving districts to have housing associated that they may not have with them now. If it's an existing plan development, it would be based on the underlying residential use that's associated with the parcel or what is adjacent if there was not a defined density. And in the case of community serving, what we've seen is we've seen hospitals and areas where universities come in, or primarily here in West Palm, what we've seen is churches that are interested in doing either special needs housing for seniors, or they have property and they're looking to be able to make that property available with some support services that they can provide in the church. We have a project right now that's been approved at the county that's getting some money through the new bond issue that's doing just that. So we've given a mechanism to be able in the CS district to create density and allow for production of workforce. But again, we've created criteria. It's got to be 100% workforce. It's got to be related to the community service that's going on there or an employer. If we did have one of our hospitals that had extra land and wanted to build workforce housing, we now have a mechanism that would allow us to do that. The general standards are, as we've discussed with most of the projects that have sort of been perfected through Jennifer's experience with many of these projects, and that is units have to be dispersed throughout the project. If you have multiple buildings, multiple floors, we're not looking to ID a set unit in this portion of a floor or in this particular building. Workforce was meant to be distributed. It's also to reflect the same type of unit mix that you have in the market rate units, same types of finishes, completeness, but we also have standards for this needs to be someone's primary residence, and that these will all be held for a 30-year period. The waivers and variances with the Tier 1, the Tier 2, if you will, the administrative and the non-administrative, the commission level review, the more intense someone asks, for some relief from the existing land development regulations, then it's going to be kicked up a level when the projects are more intense. The height and the density in the FAR that are established for the Live Local Act also require that those projects meet land development regulations to begin with, out of the box. That's part of that provision. Within our program, we give some relief. Live Local talks a little bit about parking relief should be considered. In our program, we already know that parking and landscape are two areas that we typically have to look at for some relief for these projects. It's not uncommon in our more intense areas anyway that these become, if you will, one of the items that's discussed in terms of operations of the way the project works. What we're doing as a part of the code language, and you'll see this in more detail when it comes back to you, but we've created, let's just say, you can't just ask for relief without doing something in return that makes sense for the operation both of the project, but for the value of the residents that are in the project and for the broader community. So sidewalk connections, what we call, if you will, transportation demand strategies, things that allow for considerations for alternative transportation, shared resources, shuttle services. And, maybe you're literally already on a bus route, but it's not just that. Let's make sure there's a sidewalk connection there. Let's make sure there's maybe some shade or some consideration there. This is meant to be useful in terms of its connection. So maybe you don't need as much parking because you are on a primary transit route, but please make sure that there's a connect when you ask for that relief, and that's part of what you have to give us in a design consideration. On the landscape side, you all had a lot of discussion about tree canopy this morning. You have provisions in your code, even in your downtown area, where you've got things like structured soils and provisions for trees because they are a part of your infrastructure system. They do absorb water. They do affect the heat that people have to deal with. So if you want to put less trees in, okay, where you've got a spot where you can put a quality tree, put a bigger tree, better located, make it usable function, not just another shrub to make it look pretty. It's about what's the function, both for the residents and the environment in which it creates within this new community. So we'll give you relief. Just think about this. Think about adding this when you give us design considerations. So what we'll talk about more when we come back with the code language is we're looking for application material to be a little more detailed when you're asking for this kind of relief and you're coming into the program. It's all upfront work, but we're saying if you're going to do this, we're not looking to make this anything less. We're looking to make it more, better, well thought out, and for the long term of the residents and the community that they're serving. Generally speaking, just a reminder, none of the density increases would occur in single-family districts or in historic districts. Right now, the downtown area, the downtown master plan has its own housing incentive program that will continue to exist, so this won't apply there. The Curry mixed use has its own area, but this program will not apply there. It will apply in the Northwood mixed use district and the BMUD district, the Broadway mixed use district. It's in our multifamily districts that are residential, in our commercial, our mixed use, and in some select areas of the industrial. We did the roundtable, we've done the commission work session. Next is planning board, literally tomorrow night. We would anticipate coming back for code approval through the board the end of June, first part of July for first and second reading at this point. So we're moving through the process. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Dodie, could you give the city commissioners and the mayor like a real world example we've had recently where this scenario applies? For example, the county housing authority project, which came in an industrial area. I believe they got waivers for landscaping and other things, but just so they understand the administrative process that now would occur as opposed to the previous processes.
So in the past, or for example, Legacy, I think on 45th Street is a good example, right? They had to come to the commission for review. Not that you wouldn't want to know about the project, which would be significant, but they needed relief from things like there was some relief from parking and there was some relief in landscaping and so forth. But the timing for what that approval had to go through was longer because we had to do it that way. Where under the provisions that we have now, if you're 100% going to qualify within the workforce level, which in the case of West Palm Beach is 120% of the area median income, if you're going to do that, then we're going to look at you at the staff level. We're still taking you to the PPRC, which is the Plats and Plan Review Committee. Staff's still going to look like they do the same thing, except we will have a little higher threshold for review. So in the application process, we will be looking at a traffic report and an infrastructure report so that we know that anything that's being proposed is going to be consistent. And then if it's been based on what the existing density is on the site, it's allowed to go forward through the process to final site plan at a staff level review if it's been reviewed and met and checked off the criterion that is established for both the land development regulations and the provisions for the program. The other side of that is we have projects like 8111 that had to do a land use plan amendment. That project actually had to come back through and would have to still come back through to the commission for a public hearing because they were going above the 40 DUs an acre. They were also asking for relief and waivers along with it. They didn't have significant ones, but they still had some relief related to, there was a minor setback and some landscaping that got moved around. But that would still wind up going through the special review process just like it did today.
In that example, if you remember, they originally came in with 210 units. They took advantage of Resolution 30622. They didn't quite double their density, but they went from 210 units to 358, so they took advantage. Just like one you recently approved on Forum Place, which is 35,000 square feet of office space now being replaced with a 238-unit development with 60 workforce units. Again, another project that's coming in with that resolution.
Just a comment, and kudos to staff for thinking creatively and reaching out with some specific programs that our developers can take advantage of. As you all know, I recently received a Hometown Hero Award for the city's efforts in the affordable and workforce housing space. But as I said during my acceptance speech, it really is a team effort. And this is a prime example of that, where our staff has put their heads together to come up with programs that we believe are attractive to developers to incentivize them to give us more workforce housing. And so thank you, staff, for doing that. I think it will help us reach the goal that I announced during my acceptance speech of coming up with an additional 800 units of workforce housing before my term is ended. And this will help us get there. But it requires that degree of intentionality, and I think that West Palm Beach is clearly setting the bar and setting an example, hopefully, that other municipalities in the county will follow. So thank you again for the creative, outside-the-box thinking.
By the way, I neglected to mention the CRA. They've also been key in the discussions and obviously have been key in some of the projects within their CRA districts and providing additional incentives. So it's a big toolbox that we're trying to create. And as Dodie said, put that toolbox under one umbrella so that developers clearly know the different pathways they can take that we provide incentives for.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. I too applaud the ingenuity and the innovative way that we approach this. You know, I know that West Palm Beach is the benchmark as it relates to any municipality addressing the workforce and affordable housing issue. I believe that we truly lead the pack and set the bar, and that we provide something for people to emulate. I do, and that comes from us being intentional and doing the work that's necessary. I know that this issue, this matter, is greater than we can, resolved very quickly, but as long as we're continuing to move forward, I think that we're doing the right thing, the right way, and I'm just looking forward to us continuing. And I believe that that goal is totally attainable. We're going to achieve it and set a new goal before the end of this next few years.
Absolutely. President Ward?
Thank you so much, and I know we've been working really hard at this, so I congratulate you in bringing this forward. And I just want to, I know you touched on it, but because I've already gotten questions and concerns on that, on the density and the potential of doubling in some areas, if you could just talk about where we're, like, real world experience, where we would see that, where we would not be able to do that because of the fear of, other caps, and then obviously just to, we can have communications with residents and understanding of what they could potentially be seeing.
Well, there's two things to consider. One is we basically take from whatever the existing density is, and the consideration is that you can perhaps go, and I just pulled this back to the multifamily. So 64 is the top in an MF32 district, and then the MF14, which could conceivably go to the 28. And usually it's our residential districts where we have the greatest sensitivity. In all of those districts, we have land development regulations that require setbacks and buffers and parking and things. And that's why we've created criterion that not only continues to enforce a land development regulation, but that's why I said you can't just throw the parking out or the landscape out without some consideration. And you need to think about that up front. We've had some discussions about the US 1 corridor. One of the things is adjacency. So where we have in commercial districts, adjacency of residential typically behind. And I'm going to just clarify, adjacency, the way we deal with it in that case is on any side, looking at you're adjacent to residential and you're non-residential, right? In Live Local, they gave us a different definition of how they want to apply that. Which is different and far less impactful for protecting a resident that's on one side of a property. In our regulations, and you'll see this in more detail when we go through it with the code language with you, we have maximum heights that are established. We do not allow them to exceed the heights that we set in our program. And the reason for that is if your single family is adjacent to one of these commercial sites, you're limited to 65 feet out of the box. If you are in a mixed community where there's some maybe non-res and some residential adjacent to you, then you can be considered up to maybe 90 feet. Again, those are maximums that can't be exceeded. Once you apply land development regulations and setbacks, it may be pulled back. But the truth is, we put some caps in. We did that on purpose. We operate that way in the code. In some of our districts now, like our commercial districts, we have provisions in the zoning code to talk about when you're adjacent to these uses that are non-residential with residential, you've got to limit height. And usually that's the biggest thing. But if we're going to give relief in terms of parking and landscape, like I said, we needed to make consideration for those too. It's meant to be a good part of your community. It's meant to be a continuation of the value of the community, and it shouldn't be something that people feel is a negative coming in. So we're trying to be very respectful in that process.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, commissioners? Well, thank you again. Thanks to staff and all involved with getting this thing up and running.
I'll give you one more plug, too. I have a sneaky suspicion West Palm's the only community that thought about throwing multifamily in their comp plan and allowing this program to exist that way. Others should do it, but we got phone calls. Rick got the call from the state, from the director, when they got our comp plan to review. They're like, what are you doing? Like, how does this work? And what about single family? And we're like, look, it's just residential. It's the same thing you guys were doing, but we're only doing multifamily. And they thought about it, and they're like, well, we're not saying it's a bad idea. We're trying to understand. So understand you are leading the way. And for me, it's exciting to see that there's this ability to make things happen. So thank you.
Go Team WPB. Hashtag that. Okay. Mayor's Matters. I've got one item, and I just want to thank you in advance, commissioners for agreeing to the special commission meeting tonight. And you know, it's an honor for us to be selected as one of the 100 cities that the National League of Cities is including on their 100th anniversary tour. So it should be brief. There'll be a reception afterwards, but I know doing double duty is not something we normally do, so I want to thank you in advance for being willing to do this, and it's to show NLC that we appreciate them looking at West Palm Beach, so thank you. And that's all I have. Commissioner Warren?
Thank you. I'm hoping that my colleagues can come back tonight. It is a huge deal to be selected as one of the 100 cities. There are so many municipalities that would love to have this bus tour stop, and they've chosen us. So if we can be there and invite others to attend, is there an opportunity for other people to come in, or is it just
No, they can certainly attend the meeting, and I think we've extended invitations to the board members of the Palm Beach League. Is Tom here? That's correct. Right? To the reception. Obviously, since it's an open meeting, anybody can come to the special meeting, but we have extended special invitations to the board members of the local League of Cities for the reception. That will be where? Here in this room, Tom?
It's in here.
Following the special meeting. So, anything else, commissioners? I know it's been kind of a long meeting, but thank you all for hanging in there. I think we got a lot of good information. Okay, hearing none, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you tonight.